This episode of The Prod is brought to you by Station Square Restaurant, Modern Methods Brewery, Brokers Realty, Salvatore's Italian Grill, Green Life Holdings, and Patty Leopardi Knapp for Judge. 3, 2. Ladies and gentlemen, listeners, lovers, and friends, welcome back to The ProdCast. I am your host, Jim Fogarty. We're coming to you from Two Ticks and the Dog Productions up above Dave Grohl Alley in beautiful downtown Warren, Ohio. I mentioned in episode 1, if you haven't listened to it, it's with Doug Franklin, Mayor of Warren. It is available now. But I mentioned in that episode, and I want to say it again here once we get in the swing of things, changing the format up a little bit. So you are going to hear our sponsors. Eventually in other episodes, you'll hear them mentioned in the beginning, but we won't bore you with a bunch of verbiage, me going on about how great these sponsors are, although that's easy to do. We're going to be breaking in kind of in the middle of the show a couple times with some ads. So kind of kicks the flow off a little bit faster and gets us to our guests, which is what you're waiting for. Our guest today, second episode of season 4, who is running for mayor of the city of Warren in this upcoming primary, Mr. Ken MacPherson. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, thank you, Jim. If I would have known you had ads, I might have bought one on the mayor, so it would have been interesting.
Well, I'd had to sell one to Doug too, because we got to keep it fair, fair and even. I really appreciate you coming to do this today.
Thank you.
Taking time out of your busy schedule, especially we were just talking. It's a nice day out.
Beautiful.
And we have few and far between in the winters, and so Ken is graciously coming today to hopefully reach voters instead of doing door-to-door. Door-to-door is kind of a thing in political campaigns, right, where you're knocking door-to-door to kind of meet your constituents and gauge what they're feeling and what issues are important to them. And hopefully we're going to get into some of those issues today. So, Ken, let's just dive right into it.
Well, let me jump in. Do you mind if I interrupt?
Absolutely. No, get in there.
So I listened to your podcast with Tito, and he said something about touching voters, right? A brilliant individual. And that's the key, is touching people, getting out and touching people, right? This business is all about that. So those touches are important. And you, as a marketing guy, right, you understand the definition of a touch and eyeballs and impressions versus interactions. And interesting side of the business, right? There's a lot of marketing and advertising and messaging.
Sure.
So this is kind of neat talking to you because you're an expert at this, and so I
use that term loosely here, Ken. But I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, we try to. I always try to break it down into athletic terms, so it's easy when I have clients who have played competitive athletics. I have a client right now who hasn't, so when I tell her certain things and I'm talking in boxing or in football or she's like, she gets it. Not having played in a team environment or sports, it's I have to change it up a little bit. But in politics, a lot of people know, and I gave this disclaimer in the last one, so I want to give it in this one too, just for listeners out there. Neither Ken nor Doug have employed me. People know that I'm a political media consultant and a producer and on that kind of thing. And this is just for an informative conversation about these upcoming elections. We're making these first 2 episodes really, kind of the Dub City special, the Dub City 1-2 punch, to really inform voters, because a lot of times they're making information, or they're getting their information and making decisions based on real finite messages, a postcard or a billboard or a Facebook message or television commercials if they're doing that, or radio or whatever it is, an interview on the news or a newspaper. But to sit down and really have a candid conversation, with both of you guys, I think is it allows us to kind of to stretch our legs a little bit, to get into a little more details that maybe we're not able to get into in a couple of columns in a newspaper.
And this long format's nice, right? For an hour and a half,
yeah,
we can dig in.
Yeah, we can totally dig in.
Yeah.
And so I always talk about ground game versus air game, right?
Yeah.
The passing game is like TV and radio and the stuff that I do, that we do at Two Ticks. And the ground game is making those touches. They're different kind of touches, but it's more of the hands-on, shaking hands, quote unquote, kissing babies, where you're actually meeting people and you're going to functions like this spaghetti, this benefit spaghetti dinner that you're having.
We had it.
You had it. That's right. Oh, that
right.
was for the Furtura, Patty Knepp,
Yeah.
who's running for judge. She actually was telling me she was there. And those type of events where you're going to events, fundraisers, either for yourself or for other candidates or for community stuff. And I always look at people's, what's their resume before they were in public office or before they ran. Were they involved? Were they doing, were they volunteering? Were they a part of the Rotary, or were they a part of, you can name all those different groups. What were they doing before? And I gave your opponent, our mayor, some credit. When he ran, when Dennis Blankenham ran, it was I think I said this in his episode, I don't think contentious is quite the severity of the word, but it was a challenging race. And Dennis was critical of things that Doug had done. And it's easy to take that personally, right?
Right.
Because you take it personally. I mean, it's your livelihood and it's your passion. If you're in it for the right reasons, it's your passion. And so to go through that campaign and then come out on the other side and to work together to see both those guys, and really it's probably more of a testament to Dennis in this example, that here's a guy that ran, and even though he didn't win, he's still involved and
right.
he's still pushing the ball forward because he's so passionate about Warren. I know that you are that same passionate. We have had conversations in the past. I don't quite have the working relationship with you that I had with Doug.
Right.
Doug had reappointed me to the Packard board, and after Michael O'Brien was no longer mayor, and we have had some working relationships on some nonprofit work that I'd done. But I knew of you before, and you have run for state rep in 2014. Okay. Yeah. And so, you're a guy who, first off is, to me, okay, in my opinion, is very intellectual and very kind of avant-garde is an artistic term, but kind of avant-garde in how you view the world through technology. Yeah. And I think that's an interesting spin on someone who's, we're talking about a new economy for Warren, right? And a new economy for Trumbull County, the potential of, right? With Voltage Valley and these ideas of not so much, manufacturing. And you kind of come from your family creates, explosive-proof glass, puncture-proof glass for steel companies, right?
Right.
Furnaces would pop and explode and things of that nature. I had the grand pleasure of working at CSC years ago in the melt shop, and we poured some steel in some brick that wasn't dry.
Yeah.
And that shit heats up real fast and starts popping. And my buddy Tommy Hale, he always told me, he goes, Jimmy, don't worry about trying to be a tough guy. If you hear shit popping, run. And it was popping, and it was, that molten steel hit that boom, boom, boom. It was like a fireworks show. And I got caught up. I was staring at it right there as they're pouring it out. And I look around and I just see dust trails. Everybody's running. So you guys made glass so that the glass wouldn't puncture, or the steel wouldn't puncture in that high.
You got it. It's impact resistant.
Impact resistant.
That's a fancy word, and we call them engineered systems. So you start looking at missile level energy transfers. People are like, "Oh, is it bulletproof?" Take like a BMG 50, right? A 50 cal BMG. It's a highest number of joules or energy you could impart out of a ordnance of that size, and we're not even getting close.
Really?
Start looking at RPGs type thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So when Dad did some of the research back in the 70s with U.S. Steel up there in Cleveland, they set up a giant kind of slug. It was 3 inches diameter, 15 inches long. So, probably weighed 30, 40, 50 pounds. And they drop it down a 50-foot chute to impact in the center of a 24 by 24 inch sheet of glass this way, so it coming straight down. And that's, of course, the worst spot it could hit is dead center, right? And it did not penetrate. And so that was the measure that was established. Never created an ASTM standard on it, but it became an unofficial standard. So it is quite an engineered product. And so there's an example of my legacy, my dad coming from working in the Atomic Energy Commission and growing up, from 5 years old, having conversations with him about quantum mechanics. And I'll tell you, it's the best time to learn it. Like if you try to teach that stuff to people in college and you've already started your brain,
yeah, you've already. That's why I say Ken's like an intellectual, and he's bringing a different subset to what has been traditionally our economy here of manufacturing and
you got to bring me back when I go there.
Yeah, that's why I'm jumping in. I got you.
Bring me back.
Yeah,
I tend to go off.
but that's kind of what we're up against, right?
Yeah.
And so, but you bring that.
But that's our legacy.
Oh, for sure. I'm not saying, and we don't ignore it, right? We got to embrace it.
We were I was going to say a dog and pony, but a horse and buggy, right? And we have car manufacturing. Now we look at that as passé. It's old, right?
Right.
But at the time, we brought the horseless carriage into play.
Sure.
And then we brought in light bulbs, municipal lighting. Right?
Yeah, we had light in this city before many cities in the United States.
Even before Cleveland got it. It was an experimental project up there in that neighborhood, was it not Menlo Park, but the other one, Cleveland's version of Menlo, where they had GE lighting, where just up until, I remember when I went to college, I went through the tungsten plant where they actually manufactured the tungsten wire, melted tungsten, right? Again, another obscure thing. Tungsten's melting point's the highest melting point of any metal. You need hydrogen to melt it. The same element that blows up and causes that steel to pop and scare the heck out of you when you're at the plant. So it's a legacy we have of being a avant-garde, as you brought up. I love that word. Although it is art, and I love art, and I love that whole mix. My mom used to take me to the art museums, right, and we'd go visit that kind of stuff, and that kind of background of
it's okay,
of gesticulating my hands and hit the mic, of dad being the techie and mom being and she was, and I always thought I got my smarts from him, but she was no slouch, and she could hold her own, and in her own way, even at the end there when they were older, the old Jeopardy, right, and the competition there, and I think I also got that, being the youngest of five. Growing up in a tough household, right? Mom didn't take nothing from nobody, and Dad, I think Mom really put it to him more than
she wore the pants. She was the boss.
Yeah, she was a redhead. Big Red, they used to call her at the plant. So
where'd she work at?
So when I was 12, we started going to Kent for her to go get her degree, and then obviously being the apolitical family we were, we would say, hey, Mom, you want to go to college to get out of the house, but you went for home economics. And she would get mad. It's nutrition and dietetics, right? It's different. And so it was, but I would go to Kent with her and sit in her classes. And that's like literally, 12 years old, going into 7th grade, wondering like, hey, man, this crap's easier than, like, I should just go to college now. Like, why am I going to waste another 6 years? And, like,
right. This is the cool stuff.
Yeah, this is like, I should just fast forward to this and get out of it. So I would go sit in math classes and chemistry and physics. And, here's this kid in the back that obviously was too young. And I think one time I got thrown out of a class because I asked too many questions. So.
Well, that's it. I like how you're painting this background of you, because it leads us right into a couple questions that I have about your service. Mm-hmm. And I said the same thing to Doug and really to anybody. I think there's a lot of courage, just to run for an office.
Yeah. It
takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
It is a commitment, and it's stressful. And you do take it personally, especially as a candidate. It's a little bit easier for me to sit on the outside. I get the cannon fodder from the candidates, but the candidates got to take it. And a lot of times, unfortunately, in today's world, people take it a little personal and they come after you. And so the courage to do that, number one, and also a thank you for your service, because it's real easy to sit on the sidelines and coach the game, or yell it from the cheap seats. But when you're in the game, you got skin in the game, and you're putting the energy and time in. That's a little bit different of an animal, and that takes a lot more energy and resilience, because there's a lot of critics out there. There's a hell of a lot more critics than there are people willing to roll their sleeves up and do it. So just a history kind of briefly of your what you feel are your accomplishments. You have been a 5th Ward, and you are currently now an at-large councilman for the city of Warren. Thank you for your service. And you're running for mayor here in the primary against a 12-year incumbent mayor. Doug Franklin has served for 3 years.
3 terms.
3 terms, I'm sorry.
Times 4 is 12.
12 years. And
been in the city hall for 20.
Yep.
Really done his commitment. Thank you, Doug.
Yep.
And I agree with you. Ditto. I say that all the time. I say it publicly. I say it on the floor of council. I put it in the paper. And I'll say it right now. I'll put my money behind it. Anybody who wants to run, call me. I'll give you everything this guy will bill you for. I'll do for free. All right.
You're trying to taking money off my food off my table now,
yeah,
Ken.
Yeah, right. Or on the other hand, I believe all local politics are local. I'm all about people talk about running for other offices. I'm like, there's nothing else to run for. I found home, right? I had this belief when I was a kid, 10 years old, that I'd go become multi-billionaire or whatever, and conquer the world, which didn't quite happen as I envisioned at that point. That plan fell apart quickly. But I've done well. I've been blessed beyond what I deserve, and I think that being a president or any of that is, now that I see the reality of life, there's that system's crazy, right? 500 people in charge of $5 trillion. It really, it's all kabuki theater, right?
It's great. Yeah.
To some point, all politics is.
Sure.
If you've been to Warren City Council at any time, it gets that way once
Sure.
in a while. But I think local government's where it's at. It's legitimate, right? And for me, that's what caused me to run initially, was like, I'm sick of all of it. Like, I'm ready to go, get on a island in the Caribbean and just check out and live the rest in solitude. But in one regard, I'm very introverted, and like you were saying, it's a lot to come out on that field, and I respect anybody that does that, right? And I'll help. I've talked to opponents who ran against me in the 5th Ward to stay in the race, just to create civic engagement, right? Just to make it happen, right? Like don't leave, like stay in. He goes, but that means we're against each other. I'm like, no, this business doesn't have to be about against each other.
I like that.
Right? And that it should be about, like, we're all fighting for the same thing. I ran against Bob Moody in 2017. In the day of the election, I said, hey, Bob, no matter what happens today, the 5th Ward is won, right? The city of Warren's won because 2 great candidates who got out. And my wife would be getting me in the car and making me go out door to door. And then we'd see Bob go in the other direction with his wife, right? And neither of us wanted to do it, going, oh, God, I don't want to do this. I could see the look in his eye, and I knew it was in my heart, right? Like, it's tough to get out there, put yourself out in front of people. And I said to Bob, I said, no matter what, I got your back, right? You win, you call me, I'll be there for you. I'll rally the troops. Like, this is all about fighting for Warren and fighting to make our home a better place, right? And I've had my share of controversy with other elected officials, right, where we fight. And but my late wife, she said she'd go fight in a union with people, right, in union negotiations over contracts. And then you fight like cats and dogs, and you go out and have a drink, right? Like,
right.
This is business. What we're supposed to do. We're supposed to fight like cats. So we're supposed to have disagreements. We're supposed to try to hammer them out and figure out where there's a compromise. And I like to call it the 2 sides of a quarter, the heads versus the tails. And, we're really just looking at the same quarter. We're fighting over our perception of it. Mm-hmm. And having said that, there's some things we get categorically wrong, and I don't want to go there because my blood pressure's nice and calm now. But I think all in all, nobody gets into this business to just be a screw up or do whatever, right? Everybody gets in this for very good reasons, and I highly encourage everyone to do that. Come on the playing field, start coming to meetings, run for office. It's wonderful. The more the merrier. And one time when I was talking about running for mayor with a consultant, I said, I'm really about changing the world, right? I want to change people. I want to change who we are. And he goes, well, you gotta focus on winning. And I'm like, winning an election, we've proven track record, anybody can win an election, right? But can you really change a system, change people, right? And primarily, I always talk about that thing you hear in Warren. Warren's always been that way. and then I drop an expletive or two, and I'm like, but it doesn't have to be.
Right.
Like, we can change that. That's up to us. It's that way because we make it that way.
And we accept it.
Right. And so, this campaign, like you said, nothing personal against Doug, right? Great guy, led us through some dark periods for the city, some tough times, right? But I think this is about, and I want to keep it 100% positive. I want another Bob Moody campaign where we're out hustling, which we are. Like, I've seen Doug around, and I saw him at council the other day. He brought up the fundraiser for Lena Mason and Christian that we have for the murdered grandchildren, and he said he would be there. Respected Cindy and respects what we do there. And I try not to make that political, particularly on me, and I'm constantly dragging my folks back away from that, right? And everybody's invited, other politicians are invited to come, huckster all they want, right? But I'm trying, and this year I didn't put it out to the media as much as I did in the past because I don't want to blur those lines. It's a little icky for this particular thing with what happened. But I think that it is an honorable profession. I love being a ward councilman. That's when I fell in love with it, was hustling for people, getting stuff done, fixing things, right? So to that point, I think that that's important to have that in your blood, in your DNA.
Lenten time or anytime, Station Square seafood is delivered daily and always prepared fresh every time. And now to go with your salmon, swordfish, or any favorite dish, Station Square's small batch signature seasonings: lemon pepper, Cajun, or charcoal steak rub. An attorney our community has trusted for 3 decades, Patty Knepp, experienced in both criminal and civil law, and the only candidate appointed to serve as acting judge. Paid for by the committee to elect Patty Leopardi Knepp for judge. Well, what's something you feel like, since your time in council, that you're one accomplishment that you can hang your hat on and go, you know what, I'm really proud that I did that. I helped this person or this group.
Oh, I can't tell you the number of people, like everything from barking dogs to angry neighbors. Try to be as a ward councilman, still as a councilman, as a community leader. I try to be Sheriff Andy. Right,
Mm-hmm.
From that old show, you and I know because I find out how old you are, so you know what that show is. But he's never about like, hey, I'm the sheriff, you're going to go to jail. It was always about trying to figure out like how to solve a problem through just talking and communicating and getting past the. And I love that part of it, and I've helped and worked with a ton of people, and a lot of issues. But I think in terms of like who I am and where I want to see things go, the biggest one was just recently. The head of engineering, Paul McCoskey, he's got a PE, right, a professional engineering certificate, which is fairly accomplished, right? I don't know if I could pass it, right? It's a pretty good exam, pretty tough, and plus it's civil engineering, which is kind of boring stuff. Who wants to spend their time on that? I always kid him about that. But he wanted to bring professional credentials into the engineering department because right now it was basically walk upright, chew bubble gum, and if they wink, wink, nudge, nudge over in HR, you get the job, right? And he got lucky and had some qualified people there that knew how to do spreadsheets and do some basic type stuff. But he was all about, and at one time we had a guy, Gary, who's over in the county, works for the county engineer. Coming up through water pollution, actually has his license through that, which is a fairly big accomplishment to have a Civi and PE and then have that license. So he was well accredited, but we couldn't keep him because we couldn't pay enough, right, to keep him because of the way those wage tiers were set up. And he had been kind of dancing around this and through, contracts and unions and bargaining unit. And these are all important things and nothing to be disrespected at all, because it's honestly keeps things very fair in a system that can be capricious and arbitrary. We got that through. So I as soon as I became head of engineering, that was the first thing I went after, right? And
you're the chair of the engineering committee in the city of Warren.
Currently.
Yes.
Yeah. And previously it was public utilities, and I did some really cool stuff with that. We got the telephone poles being looked at. We got that process moved forward. And now it's kind of fall by the wayside again. We got the telephone pole problem, but I think the current chairman of that. I kind of chased after him on a few things and said, that was a heck of a project, right? You know, like trying to figuring out that, because it's this, one of the things you're going to find is there is no government singular. There's subdivisions of government, right? This federal system is 3 layers, if anybody remembers this crap. But at the bottom layer, where we're at, there's all these other subdivisions, school districts, you know, pollution districts. You know, I've got in my old ward, or still my ward, I still love being ward. I still take care of things. And I told the inbound 5th Ward Councilman, I'm like, you're going to have to put up with me dabbling in your ward. It's just going to be how it is. But we had a neighborhood there where it was county water and sewer, city water, county sewer, Niles Electric. It was a
hodgepodge.
Yeah. And so, you know, you have to get ready for that. You know, with school districts crossing, we have Hound School District in Warren, right? We have Warren residents that are paying county sewer. So it's a crazy kind of mix. And so that public utilities thing is another thing with PUCO and the state coming in and having general law versus local law and what we're allowed to touch and not to touch. So it took me a while to find like who's in charge of that. But once I found that guy and he was playing kind of squirrely with me, I said, it's no problem. You don't have to help me. I'm just trying to figure out who the guy is so I can subpoena you to a committee meeting and have you testify why my telephone poles are all screwed up all over my city. And then the spreadsheet I've been waiting for showed up in the email.
We call that in jiu-jitsu leverage.
Yes.
Gave him a little bit of leverage. Yeah. Pry him free.
Yeah, so our friends at First Energy were just totally blowing me off. And it didn't take too much leverage. And suddenly that spreadsheet showed up with because, you know, you pay for those telephone poles. They're supposed to be brand new every 10 years.
Oh, is that right?
I can tell you we got telephone poles in the city every 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them look like this.
Yeah. And
I'm curving my hand for those that are just listening. Yeah.
And the other problem is then, again, this multi-jurisdictional, we have these 2 dying entities, right? The POTS, the plain old telephone company, the rotary dial, clickety-clickety-click, and the cable company. Well, it turns out the cable company is not a regulated utility, and we could actually regulate them. And I talked with I'd love to see us have, hey, every day you don't pass 7 days, right? You got 7 days, business days, I don't care what days, but some window, $100 a day, you don't pull your wires off the old poles. Because you drive down East Market Street, and we've got butchered poles up and down East Market Street. And it was one of the first things I did before I got elected to earn somebody's vote on Wick Street, right? And I don't want to say their name, but a good family, right? And they said they've been after the current councilman for years to get that pole. And it's like come along, like with like literal come along ratchets, and ratcheted the 2 poles together. Here's this broken pole, like kind of duct tape to it. The new
I've seen a couple actually like that.
And it was my first time, and I'm like, and then I got to learn the system, right? And then I found out the system. I got the one people to pull theirs off, got the others to come take it down and clean it all up, and I was like, wow, I like this. This feels good.
That's a hell of an accomplishment. I mean, I know what we go through on the foundation side, where we don't have to go through all this or as much kind of red tape, if you will.
Yeah.
And just getting something done, like getting a group together to allow us to, we don't want to step on the union workers. We want to do a cleanup in the park, which is supposed to be their, is their thing. And we're just trying to help, just to step through that. You're stepping through these hoops on how many people serviced, has their wires hung on that pole, and then to fix it. That's those are things that people don't often think about. They think about these bigger, paving the streets, policing the streets.
Yeah.
Police and fire obviously get a lot of the budget, and they, as they should. You got to have strong safety services. But like these neighborhood ideas, I don't want to say they're not granule, but they're effective for a couple different things. One's they're effective, they're important because they're functional,
yes,
like a telephone pole. And the other thing is aesthetically, just like we'll talk a little bit about some zoning things. Like if you're an outside entity and you're looking to come into Warren and you're touring and you're driving through and you see a telephone pole, 2 of them, and what Kent's talking about is they're 2 poles. It's like putting your 2 fingers together and then wrapping a piece of tape around it, and that's how they're sitting upright in the road. They're leaning and stuff. So, I
If you want to be like the big boys on your podcast, I'll send you some images.
Oh,
and then you can
I can flash them up there.
Yeah, because that's
too much work for me.
I do Lex Friedman, and he'll pop them up.
Yeah.
He'll pop the links up and stuff. If we were Joe Rogan in it, you'd have it right, and instead of this, whatever this kind of art is,
that's pop art.
Whatever, man. It's pop pornography or whatever, right?
It's a picture of a naked girl.
You would have, but she's
covered. Though.
She's covered on all the, the 1970s illegal videos.
Yeah, right.
But you should have a 70-inch here. Joe Rogan it for real.
Hey man, baby steps, baby. This is only season 4.
Well, let's see if you're. We can hit it off at the mayor and I get you on here. You get a lot of better. Better advertising.
That's what I'm hoping for, man.
Yeah, advertisers, you got to pay more so we can get a 70-inch in here.
We need some monitors here.
Yeah. So but that goes to it. It goes right to it.
Well, let me dive into some of these questions.
Real quick on that one too. That is a key element of why I'm running, right?
The telephone poles?
Yeah, but the little things.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
And you said people. Who are these magical people? The people I'm looking at is we're a landlocked city, and our number one asset in this city is our homes. You take the number of homes times $100,000, and you're talking $2 billion easy or more, right? And I
don't think the average is probably $100,000 in Warren anymore, right? What's the average median home price?
There you go.
Right?
There you go.
And I kind of supporting to what your point is, right? You reduce the inventory. You're not building inventory back. I had a conversation, Brandon Giovanni, MDI Studios, who does our website. And Brandon has been a guest co-host in the season 1 and a little bit in season 2. He was going to come, but he's not here. But he had some questions because he is a real estate agent now. He's got his company also doing real estate. And he was saying, why he's asking me, but this would be questions to you guys.
Yeah.
He could, why is there no, what the question ended up being once we kind of whittled it down is, what are the incentives to have somebody, there's an open lot and you're going to build because there's not a lot of land, right? In Warren, you're going to build. What's incentivizing them to build? That it's going to cost 3 times roughly. Like if I were to build my house, the house that I have now,
it's $180 minimum right now, maybe even $200 with the cost of 2x4.
Well, I moved, so I'm in a different house now.
Right.
But it would cost me almost double to acquire the land and then to build the same structure. Building materials are up, all the stuff, right?
Right.
And if I built that house in Warren, would I ever get out of the hole on that? And the answer is right now, no. So if I built that house and I lived there 5 years and I wanted to sell it, I'd have to take a loss rather than just buying a new house. I think that's where you're going to. We don't have a lot of housing inventory.
Well, even if we have, let's forget you and you rich guys like you, right?
Well,
Let's talk normal folk.
My wife makes all the money.
Right, yeah. Which still questions then why is she with you?
I ask myself every day.
You are a very handsome man. We talked about it earlier.
Well, thank you.
Good for you. So, but I've ran into folks at every socioeconomic, right?
Sure.
And they'd rather live in Austintown, and not even the good part of Austintown,
sure,
right? The Youngstown part of Austintown.
Yeah.
And so we really need to think, and I know the mayor shares this thought, right? That we need to make Warren a destination to live, right? To come, to build, to deploy, and
how do we do that? How do you think we do that?
Well, so let's go to we talked earlier about football metaphors, right?
Love
it is Steel Valley town. I played a little Steel Valley football back in the day.
Did you?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
What position did you play?
I played, my siblings used to try to say I played guard, tackle, and end.
Oh.
Yeah, I guarded the water jug. I tackled anybody who went to it, and I sat on the end of the bench. But I got to play wide receiver. I played receiver. I played kickoff.
Nice.
And I was from little Tigers on, the smallest kid on the field, right? And just had a blast with Coach Bim Turner is the name, right, here in town. And Bim yelling at you, you screw up, you had to go apologize to the worms for desecrating your field. So we'd spend time with your face down in the grass yelling, "We're sorry for," so you can't do that.
That's old school coaching there.
Yeah.
That's Tony Knapp stuff, man.
Yeah.
Gets you run through a brick wall.
Yeah.
100%.
The whistle on top of the helmet where you can hear it go off like a cannon. You can't do any of that stuff today. But that metaphor is blocking and tackling. right? It was fundamentals. Coach Pearson, right? You're always getting better, 1% better every day. The little things, like pay attention to those details. And that's how I've always been in business. That old business metaphor, don't sweat the details. Well, heck, that brought down a space shuttle. 79-cent neoprene rubber seal versus the right kind of rubber that didn't brittle under temperature. And same thing with our city. It's the little things. You talk to real estate agents, it's the little things that make a house sell one way or another. And we have some big things, right? You brought up crime and, keeping track of our houses, doing the inspections and all. But all these little things add up. And I think that's what we need to do better as a city, as a delivery. And I know for me as a technology guy, like that starts enabling people to know that this city does a lot of good things, right? And because we're an old school kind of thing, like the Youngstown thing, hey, I know a guy. And so when you get stuff done, it's like, hey, give me a call. When I got on council, they're like, hey, if you have some high weeds, bring it in and let the head of the one department know, and they get it mowed. You just come in and tell them, Kenny. And I'm like, no, that's not how you manage. That's not how you, this isn't how it's done. Like, we should have processes, and we should have systems to do this. It isn't like, hey, I know a guy, give him a call and get it done, right? And so for me, that's a big thing I want to.
It's reactionary, not proactive, which is what we want to do.
Yeah, and so that, as a guy who's led a software company, global software company, built stuff from 15 work-study students in a windowless boiler room at Case Western Reserve at the Biosciences building to a global company where the sun never set on our employees or our customers, right, across the whole globe, not just India, but Australia, South Africa.
You're talking about Oracle?
No, I'm talking about Campus EAI.
Okay.
I built that company from nothing.
Okay.
I joined Oracle. I exited another startup I was with. Was trying to sell Oracle a software product. At that time, Case tools were cool. They were computer-aided software engineering, CASE, and ended up getting a job offer for them. And they beat me on a big sales deal. I lost, and so I'm like, hey, you can't beat them, join them. And I started off there as the lowest pay guy you could get. And by the time I left, I was a big fish in a big pond. And exited that for the startup, started that company from nothing, took it to 30 million, I think, when I exited. Still going today. I ran into employees. I run into them all the time. I was at a gig with the ACA, the Obamacare, and I was out in Oregon on doing a state level one, and ran into some employees that were there as consultants too, that were my former employees. And it's a small industry, right? Once you get to a certain level in it, everybody knows, So coming from that, cutting edge, literally cutting edge, Oracle's renowned for that. And then coming here and just bringing ideas hey, why don't we have a portal to allow our citizens to engage with our services, right, in real time? And, what's that? That's crazy talk. Well, and I brought an app from St. Pete's when I went to St. Pete's in 2019. I brought back 3 or 4 communities here in Northeast Ohio do it. And it's it was $10,000 for the first year to install, implement, train. And it would allow citizens to drop a complaint in and track it. And it's like a work order system. It'll dovetail into our work system we have now, OneWorld or iWorks, depending which one we use for jobbing stuff and which department. But, I think because of what you brought up earlier, some of it is I'm perceived as a threat, right? Because I'm a unicorn. I come to the game there's just how do you deal with this guy?
Mentored by her father, attorney John Leopardi, and through a career of service to her community, Patty Knapp's dedication, integrity, and judicial temperament will serve us well as our next judge. Paid for by the committee to elect Patty Leopardi Knapp for judge.
Need great food fast? Visit mysalvatores.com and order anything on our menu for quick pickup. All of your favorites ready when you are. Specials available on mysalvatores.com.
Award-winning beer with live weekly entertainment.
Without doing wrong. Without doing wrong.
Modern Methods Brewery, downtown Warren, Ave Grohl Alley. Check taproom hours at modernmethodsbrew.com and come thirsty. Want to be debt-free faster, save money in taxes and insurance, and retire with more wealth? Call Zach Byler at Green Life Holdings today for full-service financial advisory. 330-219-5225.
Well, your change.
Yeah,
and we're set in our systems. I have this conversation pretty frequently, and really it's over tap water. Of course, now I'm easily winning the argument after the tragedy in East Palestine. But my wife is now like, we got to get water. And I said, well, we have water. Just drink it out of. I filter the water with a zero filter, and I says, just drink.
That's what I have.
I says, just drink that, and she goes, it's too long of a process. So now we're buying bottles of water until she can readily feel safer about tap water, right? And she goes, but for years it was like, well, this is how I've always done it. Right. Well, that just because that's how you've always done it,
correct,
that doesn't mean that's the way it should be done, or you should continue to do it. There's innovations and
that's going to be a huge challenge as mayor, right?
Yes.
Like just because I become mayor, that doesn't mean anything. Right, like you still have to change the culture in existing organization, entrenched organization with the bargaining unit and management and things we've always done type attitude, and we've seen that with the gravel on the roads.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so we started this thing 20-some years ago when we went broke when the mills ended and the money fell off the table. We went from having a crap ton of cash coming in to things were tight. And so the first thing they said, well, let's just stop buying salt and we could put gravel on the roads. And, it spun out of control to one point where we were putting 90% dirt on the roads. And fortunately, it's been a very warm epoch for us this 20, 30 years, right?
Yeah.
But that was a battle. And I think 2019, again, it was coming home from a trip, MLK weekend, that big snowstorm we had, and I come onto East Market Street, and here it's the Iditarod, 5 inches of ice and snow. And I called the Trib. I just called right up. I'm like, do you see this crap? And I read them the Riot Act. They did an article on it, right? Put some of my talking points in, and we got the discussion going about that. And again, in defense mode, it was, we don't have enough trucks. Then I pulled the list of trucks, and all the trucks were, but one broke down that weekend, so we had 14 of the 15 operating, right? We had all the people. We have a call-out list, right? It's because it's an emergency, Ohio code gives the safety director the privilege to call anybody out he needs to drive truck. And so we had a list of 30 people that had driven truck already from the city. And when it came all down to it, what it came down to is, and everybody obfuscated around, but we had been used to negotiating with this billion-dollar French company that runs the salt mine and buying from them directly. And Ohio changed the law saying you can't sell salt in the state of Ohio for road for any less than the state minimum. So they inked a state contract. And the county engineer took care of that. It all came through the county engineer. And he sent a letter out to all 34 or 35 entities in the county, and only one never sent back. And so when we went to try to negotiate this, when we finally got the final number, they're like, the sales lady up in Quebec said, hey, we're done. We got 1,500 tons for you. And we normally need 4 to 5, 6 tons a year. We were SOL. And so, at that point, we made some phone calls, borrowed some off Howland, had some other political entities kicked us some, and we'd have to pay them back. And we ended up having to buy some off of to finish that season out. And the next season we came back, and lo and behold, during the committee meeting, one of the drivers stood up and said, enough's enough. I drive these trucks. This is about the salt. We didn't buy the salt. We screwed up. Let's quit kidding around, right? And I'm just doing the finger on my nose what this guy said, right? And because I'd done all the work, and everybody's, again, kind of covering, and there's a lot of obfuscation, which is a fancy word for hiding, right, or obscuring. Sorry, I got to watch using my polysyllabic.
You're good.
And that was a good episode. And so we got the administration to pay attention. One thing about politicians are they like to be reelected, right? And so if you put some pressure on them, they get things done. So we in the subsequent time, knowing that would be a big issue and that I would be continuing hammering on that, and that I was relentless and that I don't stop till things are right. And that's why I'm here, and I'm not going to stop, right? Like you said, like Dennis Blink, this is not about me being mayor. This is about us doing it better. And so for me, I'm relentless. This will not stop till it's right.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the roads, because that's like a running gag with anybody that lives in this area. You can see where the county stops paving or stops their line, and the city takes over. You're driving across the street. You're like, oh, I just came from Howland. I just came from Champion. Why is everybody's roads cleared except for ours?
It's been better.
It has been better.
Right.
I'm going back to that 2019, what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Because we had a thing where they just piled the snow up, and we got a massive amount of snow.
Yeah.
But
it's Northeast Ohio. That does happen.
yeah, and
it's not like, where'd snow come from?
And now there's no spots to park on the side. So if clients are coming and they park on the side, they typically don't take in the parking deck. They couldn't even get, where am I supposed to park?
Right.
I mean, so some of that stuff. But let me touch on some of that.
Some of that stuff, though, is also a change, right? I think we weren't used to having downtown be alive.
That's true, too.
Right?
Sure.
And so adapting and overcoming, right? They saw that as a threat vector and modified, right? And so the last 2 or 3 have been fairly well handled.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we want to get to a point where we can have a plan for these things that don't happen. Again, we're just not reactionary. Like, oh, now we've adjusted because we've had so much of an outcry. I mean, I was texting Eddie Colbert, who's the safety service director, going like, dude, it's been 4 days. I can't get into my office. I can't park on the side of the road. I got to load my gear up, and it's, fortunately, as technology's gotten better, it's gotten smaller.
Right.
Okay. And I'm in fairly good shape. So, but I got to carry this stuff down the stairwell to get to the thing, because I can't get, it's like,
I know.
Frustrating.
Yeah.
So not to hammer on that, but they did fix it. What's the next thing, though, where we can be proactive about it and not reactionary?
You're with me. And that is exactly who I am. That's how I think, right? Everything's about, when you manage, I manage with the 3 Ps: people, processes, and products, right? And our product is, in the city of Warren's, a service, right? We're delivering probably some of the most important services that impact people's daily lives than any other form of government on the planet Earth, right? Local. That's why when I ran, when I ran for the first time in the 5th Ward, I talked to every super voter that I could possibly talk to, and then I just started going to the people who didn't vote in municipal elections, started knocking on their doors and say, hey, this is an important election coming up May, whatever it was, 2nd. I think it was at that time, May 2nd.
Oh, that's this one too. Yeah.
This is one too. And I'm like, but you bet you probably think I'm just saying that because I'm running it, right? But let me name 5 things, and you tell me they're not some of the most important things that impact your lives. How about police? How about fire? How about your garbage pickup? You ever try calling the White House switchboard and complain about your garbage not being picked up right? About the only response you're going to get is a Secret Service agent showing up at your house asking what kind of whack job you are, right?
Right.
And I said, your drinking water. How'd that work out for Flint, Michigan? You can't blame the government at all for that. That was that city. They tried to do a workfare job, pull water from a crappy river instead of the cheap stuff they were getting clean out of Lake Michigan from Detroit, and screwed the whole thing up. And so you look at, and we have that same process going right now with this water pollution control plan.
Yeah. Tell us about that a little bit.
Well,
that's something a lot of people don't look at. Every year we get a water report, and you can look at what the safe parameters are. They're called acceptable.
Right,
yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about the stormwater and that project they're doing now?
Yeah. There's another part, right?
Yeah.
This is which one you want me to do first.
You pick, dealer's choice.
Yeah. So one of the things is we have a legacy city, right? So 100 years ago, we didn't have plastic pipes, and so the easiest flexible way to get the water from the street to your house were lead lines, because they bend and you could make them do things, and they fairly good at passivating, and somehow for 100 years we drank lead water from that, and none of us are too badly screwed up. But now in 1980 or somewhere there, politicians in D.C. said, hey, we're going to go to parts per billion. I think at the time they couldn't even measure parts per billion. But then, like all good politicians, they said, in 2010, which was 30 years away, an eternity away. They'd all be dead and gone and wouldn't be their problem. And so, by that time it comes around, the next thing you know, we're measuring these things in parts per billion. And oh my God, we're all going to die from this. And And so there's those kind of things. We are a lot cleaner, and thank God, good for it, right? And it's good that we're moving that direction incrementally and getting better and better, and we should. And particularly around here, where we get 5 feet of fresh water every year, right? And it is a freshwater capital of the world now. And so for me, those things like the water department, the folks who run that, we've got the lady that runs our treatment plant out at Mosquito Lake. She's top rated, top notch, unbelievable. And even Franco Lucarelli, I like to pick on him and say, like, if he was our worst director, we'd be doing really great in the city. So I think all in all, the water's got issues. I'm not. The thing I pick on them about is, and everybody else does, is, hey, dude, when you're doing like Grandview or Perkins Wood and you see there's like 50 cuts, why don't you just do those next 2 cuts? And knowing full well, and I talked with Franco when I first got elected, I'm like, do you know what a hotspot map is? And so, and to his credit, man, he said no. And then at the Super Bowl that year, like a month later, like 2 weeks later, like, hey, what are you doing? I'm watching the Super Bowl and I hate this crap. Do you want to learn how to do hotspots on Google Maps? And I'm like, you got that spreadsheet of all the main breaks in the last 2 years? He's like, yeah. I'm like, send it over to me. So I created a shared folder in Google Docs, put his stuff in it, put a how-to guide in there, and wrote a step-by-step how-to guide that Franco could follow to build a hotspot map, so we could see where the mains were occurring mostly, right? Which, turns out consequently where we dug up to sewers, disturbed the soil, and then we got, and again, I did my degrees in metallurgy and material science with a specialty in electrochemistry.
From Case Western Reserve.
Yeah. And I've worked with Dr. Ernie Yeager's, got nominated for a Nobel Prize in electrochemistry multiple times. So I know a little too much about this. I actually worked in the corrosion industry, so that's what happens to those pipes, they corrode. And so I got a little into it too much than I should have. But the long and short of it is, there's one thing we could do better, proactively pull those up. Now, Franco's talked about, because like I say, hey, if we took just a penny per gallon over the last 100 years and put it towards fixing our water lines, like everybody wants Washington, D.C. to come in and save us on some golden stallion horse or something. But, it's our water department. Take a penny a gallon, put it towards putting all new pipes in, and every year do 1% of the pipes. In 100 years, we have all brand new pipes. We could have gold line pipes to the houses. But instead, we always have excuses of why we can't do things, right? But we should be more like, why can't we not do this? What's the cost of not doing this? We see what the cost is. And so we should be, Franco said he wanted to take some of this ARP money and put it towards new lines. And I agree, we should, right? We should be helping out. We should have taken all $30 million and fixed our neighborhoods up. New sidewalks, new everything. I lost on that battle. There's folks who don't want to do that. But I think it's our number one asset. It should be 100%. I'd be all for giving Franco a little bit of money, have him grab some out of his CapEx budget. CapEx is capital expenditures. It's things we go towards building big ticket items that you usually have to finance, right? More than buying a shovel. Shovel's an OpEx, right? Operating expense. CapEx. So, take some of his CapEx money, mix it in with some ARP money, multiply it, and then, go hit our 5 worst streets that have, who wants to move a young family in where that's the real danger is your kids getting hit with this, right? It's you and me are old enough, our brains are atrophied. We probably need a little lead in there to help make them work better. But then going down the line, you brought up water pollution control. That's the other. So you got pipes bringing the water in, you got pipes taking it out. Those are called sanitary pipes. And back in the day when we were a progressive city, we started bifurcating our sanitary system away from our storm system. So making what's called a separated sanitary. And that started in the 50s because we realized then we can't keep growing the city and putting all the storm water from the roofs through the same poop pipes that everything's going through. And everybody's done this. Like, this is now the standard, right? I think in the 70s it became a mandated standard, but we had already started it prior to that. And we actually passed our first law in the 70s to do that. And then we've had inspections to make sure we separated, right? Almost the whole city's been inspected except for a small neighborhood. And then at some point, the head of that department was told to cut it out, and he stopped doing it, right? But the real problem with our sanitary system becoming overwhelmed and poop water flowing from a plant that's 3 miles away from a house that's on the other side of the water divide, right? Because we're in the Mahoning Valley, we're in the Mahoning River watershed here where we sit now. It's right here 100 feet away. But as you drive east from here, you go down East Market Street, at some point you hit a little bit of a ridge there. And on Youngstown Warren Road, the road's actually called Ridge Road. It comes across. And that's the other side of that goes to the Mosquito Creek water basin, right, that we all know goes by the mall. And we have houses on the other side of that are in the Mosquito Creek water basin whose basements, this system surges, backfills all the way to their houses and blows their basements up. And so it's every house. These are some
with sewer water.
With sewer water, right? Storm-filled sewer water, storm-surged water, right? So it's a little mix, right? But, consequently, probably that last few hundred feet into your house is all sewer water, right? Because it's pushing what you just sent out and back up. And in the whole, there's 40% of the cities threatened with a half-inch per hour rain, which is a common rain, happens 2 times a year. The 3/4 inch to 1 inch per hour rain should happen once every 5 to 7. Fortunately for us, we're in a bit of a drought period, so we haven't seen those extreme rains, but like a few times in the last few decades. So you look at those days, when those happened. I think 99, 2003. There's one in 09, 11, and then this last one happened in 19, right? Somewhere around there. But so the city is under threat every time it rains. Now, I hope the $130 million worth of work we're going to do is going to remediate some of that. Hopefully the new poop pumping palace we put in is going to pump away. I'm dubious of it. I called it out to one of my fellow Case Western Reserve engineers who said, I made the comment that I proudly graduated dead last in my class. And as I wrote to you, I don't have a master's degree. Lots of people go to school for 7 years. They are usually called doctors. Most of the people I graduated with doctorates. I graduated with a bachelor's, just barely. And this guy said, well, I graduated cum laude or whatever, that stuff that I was never anywhere close to. And I said, well, good. Then you should be able to show me the math that tells me why a dual north-south are the 2 pipes that run under the river here down to the plant, why that when those are surcharged, whatever you're going to do down there is going to fix that. Like, how are you going to unsurcharge those with a half-inch rain? And how adding these new pipes that we did up Niles Road, how's that's going to, like, if it's like traffic, if the highway's already packed and you're building an extra lanes onto the highway, it's not going to change the fact that the highway's already packed, right? Now, will this pumping station change it? Maybe maybe they're getting bigger pumps there. Maybe that'll pump more, and you see it in the overall numbers on the design. It doubled in size and stuff for surge. So let's hope so. But its actual poop treatment only went up 25%. We went from 16 million gallons a day to 20, but a surge went, I think, from 20 to 40. So hopefully that'll be enough, right? But we didn't address the root cause, and the root cause is we put too much stormwater in the poop pipes, and we have too much crossover. So we're trying to address that, and we have study after study, tons of studies. Hopefully they're starting to work on those eventually. They said in 6 years they should have it all done. But 6 years from now, $130 million, our credit card's maxed out, right? Your water pollution control bill on the bottom of your statement, you see it says water, sanitary, garbage pickup, and storm. Those are all going up. They're definitely going up.
Significantly, you think?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because we kicked the can down the road, right? So we passed a 6% increase for every 6 years, for 6 years every year. So we've had 2 6% increases, right? But then at the end of 6 years, we needed like a 50% increase then. Like as soon as we started, like, because you got your credit cards running up and you got to start making payments right away to knock it down. We needed to start making that cash flow increase on the cash side. Then, fortunately, the negotiations we did with the county brought us a lot more money, and we're getting a lot more money off that than we expected. So that's been a big boon to the cash flow coming in. It's helped offset some of that. But like we'd never had a committee meeting on that.
So what's stopping them from adopting your idea, which we had this conversation when Doug was here, governments and governmental services, everyone's like, we got to get somebody that understands business in there to do this. You're not running a business. Running a business and running a government, two different things.
I hate that.
Municipality. It's terrible.
It's terrible. And I'm a businessman. I've ran business.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But kind of to your point, it's the same practice in business. Like these new cameras, I didn't have to put them on credit, because every dollar that I make, a portion of that is segmented of it. Some of it is my pay, some of it is our team's pay, some of it is the insurance. It's to pay for the lease, to keep the rent, and then a portion of it goes into a general, what I'll call an equipment account. It's all kind of in there, but so when I need new stuff, I look to see how much I can allocate, and I have the money there. And if I have to, I have only had to take, thank God, one loan in the 20 plus years that I was here. My dad loaned me $10,000 to buy a new camera when HD, came out, and we were still in the transitioning back
And now
into
these
this
things
space.
are even better.
These aren't the video is not as quite, but the audio on those are fantastic. But if I got to drop $1,000 on cameras, I don't have to worry about I just write the check or I just put it on my credit card and then pay it off because I'm proactive. What's preventing them from doing the same thing? From government doing the same thing? Do they take or is anyone going to take your advice? And it's because it sounds so small, a penny, but a penny per gallon. All these people, like that shit's going to add up pretty quick.
Yeah. I think that we've become complacent in a lot of ways, right? To Doug's credit, he comes from the legislative side, so he knows how the system works. He is very, very savvy in that area. He's able to do that Machiavellian stuff, right? I don't mean that as a pejorative. It's out of due respect, and I don't want to say anything negative about him at all.
He knows how the system works.
Yes,
right.
Yeah, and he works it. He knows he can play it better than anybody. And there's part of that too. Like I was just getting up to speed, right? Like when I showed up, and it was, there's a lot of 9-1 votes early on. My first vote in council was for $450 an hour lawyer to come in and represent the city against the county. And I'm like, ho, and I'm, you're all nervous. You're like, it's my first time. And when do you talk? How do you talk? When do you question stuff? Like, what am I supposed to say? Like all of that. And I've been to plenty of city council meetings. But like to your point, it's a lot different sitting on the field playing when you're a quarterback and some of the 300-pound lineman's chasing you.
Right.
It's a lot different than yelling at the TV.
Yeah.
Hey, turn left, dummy.
Yeah. Why didn't you get rid of it?
Yeah.
I would have thrown that thing. Yeah. You weren't going to do shit. Put another potato chip in your mouth.
Right.
Yeah.
So my first meeting's that, and it's like the fourth or fifth piece of legislation, and I'm like, this ain't right. And I remember Eddie calling me out saying that, I just try to, everybody their first day wants to make a name for themselves. And I was really...
there's Ken grandstanding at council.
Yeah, dude, that later is what they came to, right? But that one was like, I'm like, I actually had in my mind to keep my mouth shut, try to keep quiet the first day. But like that was just so egregious, right? No scope, no delivery, no term, no time, right? Standard stuff you do when considering any of this. Just, hey, let's hire this guy $450 an hour. For what? Yeah, to negotiate. Negotiate what? What are the details? No questioning, right? And so that's another big win, what I've seen on council. Since I joined council, I see a lot of folks now asking a lot of folks that are old timers. Been there, done that, right? Getting their steam back under them, getting their feet back under them. So that's a big win for me. That is a huge win. It doesn't seem like a lot, but that meant a lot to me to start seeing other folks picking up that mantle and asking them questions, some tough questions. And that one, by the way, was another one. I whispered in the media, I got it in the paper, said it to the mayor on council, said it multiple times. Hey, 2 of these free people from the county live in my ward. Like, grab some beer, grab some pizza, lock them in your office, and nobody gets out till we hash out a deal, right? Like, how do these people aren't? It's not like we're negotiating with some foreign government. Like they live in our own city.
Yeah.
2 of the 3,
yeah.
Right? And the other was Frankie Fuda. How tough is he to negotiate with? So come on, and so I kind of threw that out too, and put that out there, and used a little bit of the that public cajoling to the mayor directly and in the paper. And to his credit, he got it done. He went and he did exactly that, and we got a deal done. And we didn't spend a lot of money on $450 an hour lawyers. We spent a little bit, but not as much as I think we would have had I not kind of brought that to the forefront.
Yeah, well, it takes people like you to shine a light on things sometimes for people to get moving, and that's unfortunate sometimes because we do get a little complacent. Yeah, we do.
I get complacent. I have to tell you, I'm pretty comfortable. To run for mayor here is my third time to retire from my career. So, it's tough, right?
How old are you, Ken?
56.
Okay, so you're still young, man.
That's what I keep telling. That's what my old friends tell me, right? The octogenarian friends I have tell me that. Yeah, I am. I'm still young, and I'm for this race. I got myself mentally and physically in shape, right? So I quit drinking altogether. Maybe once a month, right? And get up in the morning. I've been running now. I got my average mile down to almost 10-minute mile. My ideal is going to try to get down to 9.5. So that's my 35, 40-year age range, right? But improving yourself, getting complacent is easy. And you're with Bundy. Did you do jiu-jitsu with Bundy?
Yeah.
That man's amazing. Hey,
great training.
Free ad for you on here.
He'll love this.
Bundy Jiu-Jitsu. Jim Bundy's the man. He looks like he's one of those mean, break your arm kind of karate guys, but he's not. He's a pussycat, and he's about mental state. And I love the dojo over there, and I love the team. I love everybody there. I wish I had more time for it. I will be back, Jim Bundy.
We'll go back. We'll have to train together.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah,
we will.
My son goes. In fact, when I get done with this,
Yeah.
I go home to pick him up and take him to class, and then I'm working on a book. So I'll sit there and watch out of one eye and work on my notes for my book on the other.
Have you ever done it?
Jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've trained with Bundy for.
So can you do a Kimura? Can you do an arm bar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a purple belt, Ken.
Oh my God. Are you really?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh God. That's scary. Yeah.
Don't fuck with me, man.
No, not at all. Well, you said the F word on here.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't encourage me.
Yeah. Yeah. Get loose, Kenny.
Yeah. It's
Good thing we don't have any
down.
beer sitting on the table.
No, I don't need it. It'll come out without it.
What you're saying though, like it's as much of a. I've done multiple martial arts over the years. I grew up in a boxing family, and 4 years old, my grandfather had the gloves on me, and so and I had done some other stuff. What's called balintawak, which is like Filipino close quarter stick and knife, the eskrima. Bobby Tabota over at Eric Lance's place in Newton Falls. He does jiu-jitsu now too, but that's what he was training. He was actually training that morning. And then I got involved with Bundy, and I was like, what is this jiu-jitsu stuff? I knew what it was because of the Gracies, and I watched UFC, but I'm like a boxing purist.
Yeah.
But I went to one private with Ottavio Musumeci from Station Square.
Yeah.
And really, I only went. I love telling this story. I only went because fight days were Fridays where they mouthpiece and gloves.
Yeah.
And I was like, and Ottavio's a big smack talker, and he was like,
No, really?
Yeah, you can't do this. I'll kick your ass. I'm like, I'll be there. If I get to punch you in the mouth, I'll be there because I know my boxing's better than whatever you got. Yeah. But once I got with Bundy and did some different stuff, and I was like, wow, this stuff is really useful physically and for self-defense, right? That's his brand of jiu-jitsu, is self-defense. It's not tournament type stuff.
Right.
It's not sport jiu-jitsu. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that's what
But
Bundy's
he's got
is.
a few of those. I thought he had some guys doing.
He's got some guys, some younger kids that do competition, but his Gracie jiu-jitsu is all about self-defense and keep it real, right? We're gonna glove it up and we're gonna touch each other. We're not trying to hurt each other. But once I got into that, that's my physical space. I need contact. I'm not a golfer.
Yeah.
I'm like a basketball, football, soccer, boxing. Like it needs to be. I got that part of it, but the part that I really liked was this mental chess game.
1% better.
Yeah, with yourself and with your opponent, and working out mechanically through leverage and through
the physics,
push
is
and
amazing.
pull.
The engineering blows me away. But I giggle. I would giggle when stuff would move.
He's like such a. This is a great compliment to him. He's such a nerd about it. Where he's talking about it's connective bone on bone. Like I'm looking at you, right? When you look at somebody, you're like, I'm looking at your structure, not your mass. This dude's, obviously, you look at that. Holy shit!
Yeah,
this guy's jacked. I don't want to tangle with him. But if I can frame him in a way and defend long enough to burn this guy out, I'm gonna find a piece where I can. Kimura is that's one of my go-tos. I'm a Kimura guy. I like the Americanas. And
he teaches all that, right? The white
great.
ropes. Oh, yeah.
It's great. Yeah, my son's in it. So we have a 10 by 10 in my basement. We're off the subject a little bit, but
no.
We have a 10 by 10 in my basement. So I've had some health issues. I haven't been able to go as much as I had liked, and COVID kind of put a spin on that. And my work capacity is different than it was pre-COVID. So to get there to do privates, because I was doing privates for 4 years with them, and then I was doing group classes off and on. I still kind of do group, but I haven't been back for a while. But my son does group. So I've been using my son as my training partner at the house.
Yeah.
So he's 10 now. So for like the last 2.5 years, we've had this, 10 by 10, really nice, and we roll. And, he when he was 8, it was like, he wasn't as good, and he's not as strong, but he weighs about 85 pounds. He's 10 years old now.
Yeah.
And he's strong.
Yeah.
And he knows jujitsu.
Yeah.
And so now, I could still whoop him, okay?
Yeah.
Because I'm a man,
Right.
but it's getting a little bit more, he's getting so good, and it's getting a little bit more difficult. Now I have to think.
Has he armbarred you yet?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. He's armbarred me. He's tapped me out at Americana. I mean, I give him some stuff too, because I'm trying to build his confidence.
Yeah.
But he's a headhunter, man. He's looking for the choke.
Yeah.
And he's put a couple. Yeah. He's all of a sudden I'm maneuvering light roll. I close my eyes when I roll, with anybody, but just to connect. And there's been a couple times all of a sudden he's sneaking on my back, and he's taking a rear naked choke.
Monkey.
Yeah.
He's spider monkey.
Get this kid off me, man.
Has he got you with the legs? Got you in a leg choke?
No, because we don't really, Bundy's not a big leg guy. We don't do a lot of leg locks over there.
Yeah.
It's mostly, the it's not that they don't, he doesn't teach it at times, but it's mostly because a lot of those knee, there's certain ways when you want to twist your knee, it ain't ever coming back.
No, I'm
so
saying
be
with the
careful
choke, that leg
choke.
The triangle.
The triangle. Yeah. His legs aren't big enough to kind of get around me yet, but he's trying.
He's getting there.
Yeah.
That's fun.
A couple of years he'll be there. He's real good in class. I go and watch him. It's awesome.
It is. It's amazing. I love little kids. At that age, 10's amazing, right?
Well, I think probably a lot of your upbringing going to college classes with your mom at 12 years old exposed you to some stuff that most kids didn't have. And so you probably had a leg up. Like, I feel like that's kind of about my son in terms of if he ever had to be put in a situation where he had to defend himself, like he's got a leg up. He's been training since he was 5 years old. He's got 5 years of jiu-jitsu and
now on the physical side, that was my brothers used to, they were next oldest sibling 6 years older. My brother was 8, and the oldest was 12 years older than me, right? My mom used to like to remind me I was an afterthought, and I was living proof that birth control is only 99% effective. But my brother used to box with me. I learned boxing just the same way you did, right? Getting, throwing roundhouses, my brother popping me straight. Roundhouse!
Yeah.
So, it's... And there's a balance, that yin and yang, that Eastern philosophy of having both, right? But it's a Greco-Roman also.
Yeah.
So I love it.
Were you a wrestler?
No, I didn't. I wrestled a little, and then I stopped. Mostly football. Okay. And running, and I regret not doing more wrestling.
Yeah.
I loved it.
I always feel like when I wrestle, when I roll with guys who were wrestlers, doesn't matter their rank. White belt, blue belt, brown belt, black, whatever. They even coming into class, I feel like they have an advantage.
Yes.
That was a big thing for me. It was like I wanted to keep my distance, and plus, you're in people's personal space, man. I mean, you.
But you have the other side, the throwing. You could throw the fist, so you could jab, and you
could
move.
When we do,
and Bundy teaches that too.
Yeah.
He's really good at teaching all three parts.
Yes, right? And he's really good at pointing out. I developed some bad habits over the years. Yeah. I boxed in high school, then boxed for years and years and years. I went back when I was 35, just messing around with, the guys over at Warren Boxing.
Yeah.
But I developed some bad habits, and primarily from just hitting my heavy bag in my basement.
Yeah.
And Bundy was, you're knocking. You're not turning it over. And I was like, oh, okay. He sees that stuff, which I'm appreciative of.
Funny story. He was teaching some kind of choke where you crack the neck or something, right? And
there's no chokes where you crack the neck.
Yeah, well, in my case, he grabbed me and my neck went.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And I thoroughly thought he killed me. He thought he killed me, right? And not knowing I'm just like an accident-prone idiot. And he goes, oh, yeah. The look of fear on his face was amazing. It was worth it, right? And I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah,
That
got
felt
my
good.
adjustment.
I'm
Yeah,
like, hey, thanks.
Yeah, let me get the other side.
Everybody laughed.
Chiropractor time.
But I'm sure he thought he killed me.
Yeah. Well, it's not a sport where you're not going to get dinged up. I mean, you're
yeah.
going to get dinged up. It
Yeah.
just this kind of comes with the territory.
That was my biggest fear. Like first time I did a arm bar, right? I really didn't want to break somebody's arm.
Yeah,
I was
sure.
afraid of going too far, so I'd always go too light. But I love that, like mechanics of how that just slip here, slip there.
Sure.
You follow those fundamentals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. So back to this
let's
thing.
Yeah, let's try to transition that jiu-jitsu into
But
into
that
this.
the jiu-jitsu is a lot for me because it's going to go towards the mental jiu-jitsu, right? Like learning not to be, as a leader, you don't do anything, right? It's tough to say. Like you don't do it. The city runs by not me. It's like the pharaohs didn't build the pyramids, right? And that's as a hands-on kind of guy, when you swing into a leadership position, right, where, I've had 100 people reporting to me, large across the world, right? And so that's a big, using the momentum of other people, right? And that's something Doug's really good at. Doug and his team are really good at doing that. And it's something I'm going to have to be conscious of going forward, is that I'm going to have to use those mental jiu-jitsu tricks, right? Because unlike Doug, where he's more of a get along kind of guy and just everybody likes him and just naturally likable guy, I'm probably not as much as I'm the polar opposite in terms of I'm a likable guy, but some of the things I say or do maybe put people off right off the bat. Because there's a candidness to it, there's a truthfulness. So
I think that's important that you recognize that and are aware of it.
Yeah.
And then you can adjust it as you need be. Because politics is, everyone says, I'm going to fight for you to do this. I'm going to fight for this. I don't want you to fight. I want you to build consensus among the people who can get the job done.
Yes.
And whether those people are on one side of the aisle or another side of the aisle, or they're from Mars or they're from, the common goal is, if that's the common goal, to fix this problem, it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat or an independent or whatever it is, like just get the job done.
yes,
So,
especially at the local level.
well, let me ask you this question, because I think it kind of dovetails into it. You were the chair of the engineering committee, you're the vice chair of the strategic planning committee, and you're member of both the traffic and safety and health and welfare committees.
Right.
How have being a part of those committees prepared you for this next step? If you were to be elected, how are those committees preparing you to be an effective leader? Or what did you learn from those things? And what improvements can we make?
Yeah, so nuts and bolts of the situation, right? So one of the things I always talk about is quality of life in the city of Warren is number one. And number one is, crime issue and safety, people feeling safe. Right up there at the top of a quality life in any community is parks and recreation, right? That's key. So right now there's, through economic development, somebody's committee, legislative, whoever, it's Saffold. She's doing the art money stuff, and people are talking about it. And I'm bringing forth, hey, look, our parks and recreation kind of got ignored for the last 20 years, right? Even in the mayor's presentation when he did his dog and pony show about what he's going to do, he talked about the one park, Perkins Park, and totally left out the soccer folks, who are now really the biggest consumer of that park on a regular basis, right? Now that baseball and softball is not as big as it is. And so there's a big idea, like so to come around and bring like a committee together to run that better. And I'm like, well, Ohio Revised Code 755-14 gives us a beautiful template for this. It actually is built in, and it is a joint recreational parks district where the city and the school district, right, under the guidance of our law director, write up an agreement to set up this joint district where we both put in, hey, here, this is our land, right, and we 99 lease it to this new remember we talked about these little fractions of political divisions, sure. And we create a new political division that's dedicated to parks and recreation. That's all they do. And then they think about this. And so things like pickleball doesn't sneak up on us, right? And they're like, oh, hey, pickleball. And and getting the right people on the job and trying to get the right things together to make stuff happen. You brought that was what you were saying when you were talking, and trying to get that to happen. And so then you get 10 people together, right? And trying to get 10 people with 10 different views of the quarter, which part of the quarter they're looking at. And so me trying to bring it back to like, hey, here's how it's actually done. Like these are these joint districts, and it answers the question of, the girls softball team playing on fields in the city parks, and then those aren't taken care of, and they're playing in weeds, and we look real, I hate to use this word, but we look real ghetto in front of Poland coming up here to play a game. It just doesn't look right. It's a bad image for everybody. So there's the kind of stuff I look at. When I look at things, I look at the system, and I look at, hey, how's everyone else done this, right? Because like the ancient Greeks said 3,000 years ago, everything worth being discovered's been discovered. It's all derivative now. Mm-hmm. And so I've always been one to look at how other people do it, copy that, innovate, right? Pivot off that. That's how I've been successful in life and in business. So I think that's what I've learned is try to like bring educational materials, try to talk. You got to really break people out one-on-one and break things down, right? A lot of times you've got to kind of do the legwork ahead of time and bring the answer to folks, and then they're cool with it, right? But even then, if it's any kind of change at all, oh God, it's tough, and then people freak out.
Well, this is a perfect dovetail because I want to get into this before we run out of time. And we've got some time. We got 20 minutes, and if we go over, that's okay.
All right.
Right now, you've been a pretty outspoken advocate of charter government.
Yeah.
And that's on the table now. And we talked about it last episode with Doug. And I'm in agreement kind of with Doug. The timing is difficult. And I feel the timing is difficult. I'll just speak for myself, not for him, obviously. But the timing is difficult because you've got citywide races that are running, the mayor's race, and then you have on the ballot the potential to change Warren City from its current form of government, which is a statutory system, right, to a charter system. And a lot of people don't understand exactly what that is, and I fear there's not enough time for them to really understand it so that they can make an informed vote. And you worry about I would worry about confusion. Now, I'll do my due diligence to understand it, even though I no longer reside in the city. But what is we've
talked about this charter thing for 50 years.
Well,
right?
we talked about it.
And everybody's talked about it. Talk, right? Well, talk is cheap.
Sure.
Right. And I get things done. I don't have time to, let's talk about it. I think talk's important. You got to talk with a lot of folks, get a lot of views, right? But at some point, even the folks that are advocating for it, I got sick of hearing them talk about it. Finally, I went from being like, hey, all this charter is just switching the team running the Titanic to the Lusitania. They're still not going to see the iceberg, right? We get the government we deserve, right? And that's still the Achilles heel of charter, right? Otherwise, I think it works overall.
Depending on what form, though, right? Because there's multiple forms of charter government, and we have to design that.
But even if we don't fundamentally change what we have now, right? Let's say we just go to a charter and we just take and say 5 pages. Take the auditor and the treasurer, which was from an archaic day gone by system when we had horses and buggies. And people use silver coins still, right? The Federal Reserve was available back then when when this form of government was written originally and was modified slightly in 1951, right? Which is still before you and I were born. And let's take that position that is a day gone by, right? Combine that, save the half the pay, right? Because now instead of having 2 people, modern institutions have CFOs or fiscal officers, right? And just combine those 2, take that savings, right? Implement a charter form and make that be a CPA. So we don't have a replay of 2015, where we had a 50-some-year-old guy running against a young fellow with the right last name and a good family name, and he gets beat because his name ain't a good, a name everybody knows. And then, unfortunately, that young man had some issues and had to go away. And so did we replace him with the 50-year-old guy? No, that guy knew that he was done. He wouldn't even put his name in to the Democratic Precinct Committee people to be selected. Another guy did, who had a decent name and actually had a CPA and 35 years worth of experience doing public sector auditing, right? And a black guy too. And we chose my 5th Ward councilman, right? It was a hard worker and a great guy, right? And then you think, well, that's how Kenny became 5th Ward councilman. Oh no, the story gets worse. Because who did we pick for the 5th Ward? The former councilman, Bill, myself, or the lady down the street that had a background in banking and real estate? No, we chose the chairman of the Democratic Party's 18-year-old daughter. And was she precocious, which is a fancy word for having her shit together? No, she was not precocious. She was fairly nascent, right? And so nice. And her, and to her credit, much smarter than her dad, because she says, this isn't my thing, and didn't run. And then that's when me and Bob had it out in 2017. So God is not without irony on these situations, and here we are today. So I think we could do a very simple form change, right, and keep it simple and do a minor form change. Or we could do as my secret plan. Yeah, everybody says, hey,
right.
Kenny's.
Everyone, listen up. This is Ken's secret plan. This is why you're listening.
Yes.
He's revealing it on the show.
I'm going to tell you. My secret plan, if I had my wish, right, it would be a city manager. So the Ohio Revised Code gives us in 705-48 through 72, and you can double check me on that. It might be 755.
My fact checker's out today.
Yeah. You should have it up on the Joe Rogan thing.
Yeah.
It puts it up. So has 3 templates forms of government. They have city manager. Unfortunately, the problem with city manager using a statutory and Form 6 whatever, and we could put that on the ballot with 10% of the vote signatures, is all the councilmen are at large, and I think at-large councilmen are horrible. The only valid councilmen are ward-based councilmen, and I would be in favor of getting rid of all at-large councilmen. As an at-large councilman, I'm saying that, right? So we would, in the Ken MacPherson ideal world, right, have a city manager. Maybe have and this is another lie that gets put out there because, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and people don't like change, so they put things out. They don't want to have a mayor. No, Kent has a mayor and a city manager, and so does Hudson, and a number of cities do, right? And I think one of the things that they need to do is do a better job of putting sample. Go grab Kent's charter. It's online. You can Google it. You could Google anyone's charter, download it, and look at it, and we could copy and paste that, and we're done, right? And so I think that.
Let me ask you this: what's wrong with the form of government now, in a statutory sense?
So
why do we want to change it?
To countermand my friends on the other side who claim we have a strong council weak mayor. And then I had to pipe up in the meeting the other day and say, what's so strong about a council under 701.11 and 701?
Don't get in the weeds, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, but it's in the Ohio Revised Code. It's been called out in council that we're not allowed to look at contracts, right? So we did a contract with the golf course, right? And all we could do is hand it over to the safety director. And instead of hiring the guy that runs it now, we hired another guy who was a real estate developer. And maybe, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, he was going to use that land to ruin the golf course and put his own real estate neighborhood in up there in Howland, right? Maybe that's a little conspiratorial theme, maybe not. But he did, in fact, almost destroy the place. Right, he did in fact almost run it into the toilet. So that is factual. Why would a businessman investor do that? You draw the lines, connect the dots, as they say. But now we brought the guy that's running now with a K, his last name, Scott, and he's amazing. And what he's doing out there is awesome. And it's a gem and a valuable community asset for duffers who want to go out. And I used to play on that when I was a kid in high school. And but that is an example. Like, we should have been involved with that, and we would not allow that to happen. The other one was, I think we still would have had this one happen because enough people on council were sold on. But the folks over there at Packard, right? Well, it's going to save us $500,000. Well, it's going to save us $500,000 because we'd pushed $500,000 worth of salaries over there, and then suddenly we spread them out somewhere else in the city, and then we hired somebody for $250,000 that was supposed to go to zero but now it's back up to $250,000, and we're paying them to run that, and we get near zero revenue out of it, and we just put $1 million elevator in. We're going to be putting $1 million roof in over there, a new $300,000 worth of paving that we're borrowed money at 4.75% interest on a bond, right? But these kind of little things, like I think if council was more dialed in, if responsible, right? Those are the first two right off the top, right? And then this thing about we control the purse, right? My example for how that's no power, let me tell you something. If you told your better half, hey, here's $100 and make me dinner, right? And you come home, she has a new diamond ring on and new shoes, but except I think in your family the relationships change, and that would be you, and she gave you the money, and she came home and you had bought new shoes. New shoes, yeah. And what she's going to pull the money away from you? She still doesn't get fed, still doesn't get her dinner, right? You're still out. So what power is that? This is a weak council, strong administration. That's clearly the case, right? So a strong council would be one where when the law director fallaciously told us we could go into executive session to punish me for something I said on council, right? And it turned out to be totally wrong, and then all of us got found guilty of violating the Open Meetings Act, ORC 121.22. We would have fired that guy. In any organization I've ever been in, if one of my directs gave me information like that's a terminable offense. You gave something so prima facie, so absolutely astoundingly wrong, you had been fired. And I think everybody on council would agree with that. But right now, administrative side of this government's too powerful, and they run the city. And I think by most accounts I talk to, most people say it's time for a change. And I think if we did some small change in charter, or even if we did something as big as I want to do, something like the secret thing to get rid of a mayor. Here I'm the guy running for mayor, and I'm talking about like getting rid of a mayor. And I respect the idea of having like a figurehead leader, right? There's something about people, we're inculcated into having a leader of the band, right?
Gotta have a brand ambassador.
Yeah, that too, right? And so I'm running for this because I can't wait. I can't risk it, and I honestly believe there's never been a more distinct difference in a choice for the voters than the existing mayor versus myself, right? Here's a guy that's very likable, very slick, right? And then there's me. I'm a dork, and I'm.
You're likable too, though, Ken.
At times I got my moments. And that's the thing. That's what my campaign coordinator is telling me. Like, you have to get people to get to know you, right? And then they realize there's something to that quirkiness of yours, and that you're genuine about helping people, about all the community involvement I do, from Rotary Club to Boy Scouts. So yeah. I think that I'm going to come at this kicking and dragging the city forward into more modern techniques, more proactive, right? Do I think I could do it? Do I think Doug would love to do that? Yeah, I do. I think he would. I just don't think that, because he doesn't come from that side, right? And so he's got to depend on other people to lead, morally lead that, right? Whereas if I'm the guy at the top, and then by the way, the mayor is a figurehead in this current form of government. The mayor doesn't run the city. The mayor can't sign a check, right? The safety director does. The service director does, right? And so right now, though, that service director reports to the mayor. And all I'm saying is let that service director report to ward-based councilmen, neighborhood councilmen, right? And you could even have the mayor be a ward base, or an at-large, right? And have him run at-large. He gets a vote on council. And then so instead of council being just merely legislators, they're more like township trustees or county commissioners. They're more administrative in nature. They're more hands-on.
Do you think having those terms defined ahead of time would allow people a better sense of security to make that change to a charter government? Because right now, I don't think most people, because it's not their fault. They got a lot of stuff going on. They're just uninformed. Do you think if there was a definitive, here's how about we're going to do it, rather than let's vote for this charter and then we'll create the charter to make it. Do you think that's going to be a detriment to people voting for it?
Maybe. I don't know. I know.
I'm glad it's on the table because I think these are just anytime you put something on.
Now is the time. Hey, we have now the mayor's up. We can look at 2 mayors, right? We can look at 2 people. Everybody's engaged. I'm telling you, I'm going to get the vote out, right? We're going to we're sending out 11,000 absentee ballot votes for everybody that wants to vote from home,
sure,
right? Or mail vote, right? So we're going to get people out to vote. Like if you look at my election and
but do they know what they're voting on? I mean, that's my question.
They're voting on a mayor.
Well, no, I don't. I'm talking about the charter part.
All right. So having said that, I am so when all this went down with the whole obstructionism, right? So and everything, right? It's tough to get any knowledge on this because all the consultants are like, oh, we can only talk to the city. We can't talk to you even as a councilman. I've been locked out of stuff, right? So the charter stuff is actually a separate committee. And when we had issues with the city not performing on the charter, I couldn't help because no lawyer could talk to me because I work for the city and that would be a violation. So if they're going to take legal action against the city, talking to me as an employee of the city would be no for them as lawyers, right? So in all those kind of little details, I'm not involved with, right? Like I have to run for mayor. I'm running against a wildly popular mayor. Everybody knows him, right? Everybody's related to him in some way, right? He's got a long history with folks, and here I'm this nerd techie that comes in and it's only been running around neighborhoods now for going on 10 years. I've been I think the first time I tried to run was 2011, so. My hands are full, and I'm going to try to knock on a few thousand households between now and May 2nd. We're going to really get out to vote, get out to educate on mayor, right? And the Warren Deserves Better side, the charter movement, I think they could do better. I think they think they could do better. But and if this vote goes down in a no, right? We're going to have to get more signatures next time to get it on a ballot because we're going to have a heck of a turnout. Actually, it doesn't go off the primary; it goes off the general. So who knows what the general turnout's going to be? Yeah, but it goes off the last general. Actually, it depends if somebody else runs, right? An independent jumps in there. But for me, it's I could only focus on the next 70 days. Sure. And I could only focus on. I think charter has some really compelling. I always tell folks that one thing I tell you: an auditor and a treasurer with no credentials whatsoever to run 2 of the most important functions in the city. In a modern system, we would never have that. That alone's reason enough. If you need more reasons, I don't think they would matter. But I could give you 20 more, right? And 20 more examples. But let's just focus on that simple one. You can see that. Everybody can recognize that. Yeah. And in terms of I thought we did the yes/no vote, then you vote for the commission, and then they write it, right? It is what it is. Yeah. Yes. Well, at least it gets the discussion going. Yeah. And gets people talking. Yeah, and it gets to some of these fundamentals of how do we fix Warren, right? If we're systemically broke on a lot of things, right? How do we break that system? How do we change that status quo? And challenging the status quo is always been it's the 5,000-year-old thing of man organizing himself and the guy coming along going, hey, we're not supposed to be doing this. We should do this. And getting society and even in small, old caveman society, I bet you it was hard to bring change. And now we have, 39,000 people here. We have, all different factions in the city. And a legacy of a lot of problems that predate all of us, even being born, some of them, right? Like these 100-year-old sewers, pipes. Sure. Yeah. So it's going to be fun. I look forward to the challenge. What really scares me is winning because a lot of people believe in me, and that's a hell of a responsibility. Sure. And it's humbling, right? So I think about May 3rd waking up and being like the dog that caught the car, right? What do I do with it now, right? Now I got to actually deliver on all this, and I have a derogatory vision of in terms that I use for politicians, as most of us do. But like you said, I came off the field. We're on the field now. We got to play, roll up our sleeves, and make things happen. And I'm excited to do that.
Last kind of thing, because we got to wrap up. And we could go. I got like more questions I want to get into, but
I'm sorry for talking.
No, you're good. You did great. I think it's good to kind of hear your perspective on things that aren't what we're going to hear in your campaign stuff, on your bullet points that you can read in a handout.
Right.
Challenges that Warren has. I'm going to give you some of them,
Yep.
and I want you to tell me, prioritize them briefly and your ideas of how to fix. Some of them we may have covered. Obviously, we're in a declining tax base. We have educational challenges within the city schools, so those are things that are school district really centric, not government centric. There's only so many things that the government can even talk about with the schools to do to increase or to better our public schools. But because of that, because things are challenging, a lot of times the mayor and city council gets blamed for things. Some of those things are within their realm.
Yes.
Abandoned houses on Palmyra Road.
Yeah.
You got rundown structures on North Park. Other recent places, you got commercial code violations that have been brought up by city investors. Mark Marvin, who's basically has been a massive investor into the city and is now kind of holding his investment back because he doesn't feel that the city has done its job, held up its end of the bargains with other investors, namely Chris Allen, with some code violations he has, broken windows, things don't get fixed. And having someone like that, of Mark Marvin, de-invest publicly, it kind of shakes things up, right? Everybody perks their ears up, but now he's drawn some attention to some things that people are thinking about. This, I mentioned the 3-year Dana Street closure. We've got unforeseen.
Nothing he brought up I haven't heard from every corner
Likewise.
of the city.
Yeah, and I had a conversation with him because I think he was getting some heat, and I had a conversation with another guy, and he goes, well, what the hell is this Mark Marvin even doing? Why does he even care? He's it sounds like he's like whining about, I'm getting treated a certain way. And so, I said, it's not even about, I don't think it's necessarily about him. He's bringing up things that everybody else has said. He just happens to have more skin in the game than a Jim Fogarty.
Yeah.
You got
but he really doesn't. Then Family X on a side street. I almost said their name, but I didn't want to put their name out there. They don't want to, or any other family I've had conversations with from every corner of the city, right? Every area of the city. Everything he said in that is I've heard. So that's number 2 on my list is code enforcement, neighborhood cleanup. But all in all, it's really the number 1 theme, and that is our biggest asset as a city is our people, right? And our people fix that. You want to see the school district get better? Have good families here, right, that are dialed in, right? And we do. We put out, like, it bristles the hair on the back of my neck. We have an excellent school district. We put out some of the top students, right? We send more students to top-rated schools than in just as many as other schools in the county, right? But the fact is that we also have a bottom end that anchors us, right? And that we have to address that aspect. But that's an issue that transcends city council, right? The one thing we can do as city government is enhance that people in our city want to come live here, and we have a good school district, right? And yeah, it's got issues, but I know people have moved from Howland to Warren because Howland had issues. So come on. But the issue of living in Warren, that's the one thing we can address as city government. It's the number 1 priority. We need to make this a destination to come to, not escape from.
How do we do that? How do you do that as mayor?
Well, I think the number 1 way is community engagement through like neighborhood cleanups. Code enforcement is clearly a way, right? Start holding people accountable, right?
Do you think that they've done that? Do you think we've?
I think,
or is it more retroactive?
Yeah, it's and so when I was at St. Pete, when you put a property complaint in for your neighbor, right, you tracked it, what happened with it, where it went, what the resolution was. You got to see what happened to your neighbor, right? And they tell you what, revised code and the local ordinance that was violated, what happened, what the fix was when it got fixed, how it got addressed, right? Whether that's a pothole or a property violation or the like. So, like, I think that that is a key element. That is a key element. It is the number one way we can protect our number one asset is to go after that. The flooding in people's basements, I had a committee meeting on it. It was prior to my at-large election, right? Engineering meeting. Some people may have said that I was, again, showboating or whatever, right? But it was about the flooded basements. We just had a bad rain and a bad flood prior, and it was about sidewalks and flooded basements, right? What can we do to help our citizens? And it got contentious. Like the safety director and myself got into it pretty good. And at one point, it was stated that it's against the law to help our citizens with their poop water going up into their house, which is completely crazy because Girard does it. They have a backflow program. Like, there's tons of cities that have a back. It's not against the law, right? And that's fundamentally like making excuses for, well, there's 5,000 manhole covers in the city, right? Yeah, there is. So put a process together. And we had in testimony that there was some kind of process, but then, things like ditch digging. We got rid of the grade all for ditching in the ditches. We're the only political entity around it. The state does the ditches on 422 and on the state roads, right? The townships, the county, right? Why don't we dig our citizens' ditches? No, it's the citizens' responsibility. Well, okay, so then what was that $4 a month we all pay on our water bill, the stormwater one? It was supposed to go towards that, right? And I got that from John Holmes, I think that's his name, a former councilman from the 4th Ward, right? So if we start addressing these issues, right, is a big benefit for our city. If we fix our city up, is this a car alarm going off, meaning we're done? Is that how you do it?
No, but it spurred another question because I was going to ask, as the listeners could probably hear that was Burger King that was there.
Yeah.
Obviously someone's car is going off.
Yeah.
What's the process to deal with something like this? Here's now business that's gone out. Is this going to just turn into a parking lot where people can just come hang out? Or are they going to, does the city have some type of code to level that building? Is the onus upon the owner like it was at St. Joe's? We're going to have a city, a commercial property in downtown that is vacant, and then will get run down. You got millions of dollars of investments just in this block, right? And now we've got this place, and that's a concern for a lot of local business owners. Like, what's going to happen with this place? Because I leave here late at night. There's people hanging out. It was the same way when Burger King was there, but at least there were lights on and it's generating some activity. Now it's just dark and there's cars parked there, and you're thinking to yourself, geez, I hope this isn't going to be sitting for 2 years without any onus of responsibility on the owner to either level it and turn it into a parking lot, which I hope that doesn't happen, or to repurpose it.
Yeah. So we got into the building over there on Dana when it was going through bankruptcy, right? And like, you're
talking about Chris Allen's place now.
Before it was.
Yeah.
It was a bankruptcy court's place, right? And we can't tell the feds what we do. Well, yeah, we can, right? Health, welfare, and safety of our citizen is our priority. It is our responsibility. And if we turn a violation into the bankruptcy court and the executor, right, and say, hey, this is wrong, that's wrong, go fix these things now, right? Before they sold it to, we didn't have to wait. So we let that languish over there, right? Mm-hmm. The building over there at St. Joe's, the backstory to that is the guy who invested in that, dropped, from what I understand, almost $2 million into it before he said screw it and walked away, right? And we kind of kept moving the goalpost on him, right? So, and I think that to the mayor's credit, the party that was involved with that kind of arbitrary and capricious implementation of our building codes has been tempered a bit, right? And that's important because you don't want to be overzealously beating people up, right? But then on the other hand, you don't want them trashing your city,
right?
The last thing we want is that. And in terms of this as a private owner, if we had economic development, like I plan on having an economic development officer, somebody dedicated Although I know a ton of people, I can pick up phone calls, right? I think somebody whose job it is, right, to measured on the deliverable of, hey, go bring us people here, go make this happen, right? Not just, and the work he does is amazing, Dennis, right, and the stuff he's done with what he's put together here for the peninsula is just astounding. The plan there is good. I've talked with that developer, Dylan. That's exciting.
You're talking about the Fund for Warren's Future. I'm saying this just for...
No, forget the Fund for Warren's Future. I'm talking about the work he did as Dennis.
Oh, right.
And getting Dylan to come in for the peninsula work. That I don't know if you've heard the pitch on that, but that's a whole thing up there to build almost like a little hoa, little village there, right? Mm-hmm. And that may be something we have to look at is putting in. I know other parties have talked about like gated communities, bringing in gated communities, and especially with the plowing taking 4 hours at some of the neighborhoods. When we get down to tertiary streets and these back streets, these corner streets, which, by the way, I did notice on these light snows we've got so far, they did kind of hit these streets a little quicker, right? But that's a quality of life issue, and we have to address that. If we address this, making this, we have awesome citizens. They watch out for each other. Beautiful neighborhoods. People like really gel, and you could see the streets where the streets are gelled, and the next block there's issues, right? And the only way we fix that is to make this a livable city, to make it a city where people want to live here instead of, and I have no problem with renting, right? And it's a great way, especially at a transitory place where you're going into stuff, right? But if it wasn't for the landlords and renting, I think we'd have an even worse problem with filling inventory, right? Filling bodies into houses. But now we're at an inflection point, a really key point where there isn't not a lot of housing, and people are wanting to come to Warren, right? A lot of people are coming to Warren. We've got a lot of people move in. But at some point, as my good friend Buffett says, when the water comes out, when the tide comes out, back out, the investors that are naked under the water, right? And it's kind of for us, when this high tide that's happening now, and I've been telling folks, when the Federal Reserve keeps ratcheting these numbers up, and we don't have a soft landing, and it's a crash landing like 01 or 09, right, which it looks like it's going to be, where are we going to be sitting when that tide goes out? And when the trouble comes back again, and that's what concerns me. I always think about those, not the easy path, but the hard path, and how do we engineer for that ahead of time to be prepared. And I think that it'd be it's going to hit in 24. It's going to be great. Like the first year of my administration, like the mayor will be like, "Oh, deja vu! I've been here before." But for me, it'll be like, "Oh, cow, man! Now here's the quarterback, and I don't have an offensive line, and I've got to be like that poor kid from Cincinnati they were chasing down and broke his leg, his first season, his freshman season." And I think that's what I'm going to be walking into. But I think I'm excited about it, and I think that all of the things that you could ever bring up, you're going to find me coming right back to what we do for the community, how we build our city for the community, everything we fix for them. We're gonna lay the foundation to fix a lot of problems, because I think the people is what made our city great. And back in the 80s, right, and back 100 years ago when we were one of the top 10 richest cities in per capita income in the world,
City
right?
of modern methods.
Yeah, and I think people will make that happen again.
If you're looking to buy new or sell your current home or commercial property in Northeast Ohio or Northwestern Pennsylvania, look no further than Brokers Realty at brokerssold.com. If experience matters, attorney Patty Knapp's 30 years of comprehensive legal experience in both criminal and civil law is the most, and Patty Knapp is the only candidate appointed to serve as acting judge in the Warren Municipal Court. Paid for by the committee to elect Patty Leopardi Knapp for judge. To listen to the remainder of this episode, go to theprodcast.net. Pick your favorite podcasting app from our menu and subscribe to the show for notifications on new episodes, or listen to your favorite past guests on the ProdCast.